You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. This Farmstead Meatsmith production is made possible by you. If you like it, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating at a level you'd enjoy giving at. Your gift helps us increase the quality and quantity of all our free media education. Thank you, and happy harvesting. Okay, we're recording.
Good.
Hello, Meatsmiths.
Good afternoon.
We are in different quarters right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing the inside of our house, our entryway actually.
Yeah.
Because our butcher shop is just not usable right now.
Yeah. It's like 35 degrees in our butcher shop.
It's cooler than the walk-in.
Oh yeah, the
Really?
walk-in is warm right now.
Yeah. You go in there when you want to get warm.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to do this for 2 hours in our butcher shop.
Yeah.
So we're in our house right now, and we actually haven't been able to record for a couple weeks because we've just been dealing with winter sicknesses and then the snowstorm, which we're still recovering from, and it's crazy right now.
Yeah.
Crazier than normal, it seems like.
Yes, we had lots of snow. We had on Vashon, which I remind you is an island in the Puget Sound. So that would be sea level.
Right.
20 inches of snow. A little more in some places. It's crazy.
Our kids loved it.
Yeah, they were in paradise.
But then reality hit them a little bit when I said,
Yeah.
okay, guys, blackout, because we had a blackout.
Right, yes. That's the other thing about Vashon. We can't just have weather and electricity. It's like we get weather, we lose electricity.
Yeah.
It's always...
Yeah. And we haven't gotten smart yet and gotten a generator.
Right.
Like most Vashonites have.
That's the smart thing that people do.
So, we went to church and we were like doing all our dishes there and filling up our water tubs, and everyone's like, what's wrong with you guys? Are you like in the 21st century? Like, apparently not.
Yeah.
So it was nuts. We didn't have water.
Yeah.
We were roughing it for a couple days.
Well, and you don't notice that you shouldn't just rough it until you have 6 kids.
Yeah.
It's actually fun.
Right.
With, 2, 3, 4, 5 even. You can kind of say, yeah, this is fun. We're like camping, but at our house.
Yeah.
But then it's too much.
We'll spare you some of the details, but it got a little grotesque for a while.
Melting snow with using lots of propane, because, we've got propane burners and large tanks. So it's melting lots of snow to keep the ducks and the pigs hydrated. Mm-hmm. The pigs are so great. This is just a testament to the imminent domesticity of pigs. They're just so good at it. Mm-hmm. As you know, we contain them with electric fencing. That is just nothing but a couple tiny wires. No more than 20 inches off the ground, honestly. And so within the first day of snow, those were completely gone. Mm-hmm. I mean, the pigs could have just left. They could have gone anywhere.
Breached the contract.
All 5 of them. Yeah, they could have breached the agreement. But they didn't. I was really proud of them. Like I had a warm feeling inside.
Yeah.
They stayed around. They never went out.
Yeah.
They have a shelter that's out of the snow. And they still went into the snow, but they never left their paddock out there. So that was really... I cannot tell you how nice it was to not have to chase pigs all over the island in 20 inches of snow in a blackout. And so that was not...
That's what you were worried about the
That
whole
was
time?
something we didn't do.
I had no idea you'd be worrying about this. I mean, I knew it would...
I know. Because of my neuroticism. It's bad.
Well, that would have been really bad.
That would have been really bad.
Now that I'm aware of it, after the danger is past, I'm sorry that you had to sweat that.
It's all right. I shouldn't have.
I was thinking more
we've
about...
got these old spots, and they stay close to home. Permanent dwellings, even historically, like people raise pigs when they aren't vagabundos. Sorry, I just wanted to say that word in Spanish. When they aren't roving, when they aren't traveling, when they aren't following herds, the moment they settle, pigs, because pigs stay in a place.
Yeah. Yep.
But you can range, you can roam with sheep and goats and cows.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of sheep and goat and cows, it's a good segue. We're going to talk about them today. The topic of the day is skinning and eviscerating ruminants.
Okay.
Ruminants of all kinds, really. I mean, this could apply to deer, I guess, and other things that you hunt. But skinning and eviscerating sheep, goats, and cows. I'm hoping we'll get to cows. It might be a little different. But, see if there's any particularities amongst those three breeds.
Yeah.
But before we do, real quick, I wanted to mention classes, because we're trying to sell class tickets right now.
Yeah.
And they are selling. It's exciting, yeah. So I think I just got an update yesterday that we've sold, there's like 2 or 3 tickets left for each class.
Oh, wow. That's okay.
Yeah, and a couple of them we've got some more inquiries coming in. And so I think we're actually going to do a June class as well.
Whoa.
We've got an April, a May, and then we're going to add a June class.
Okay.
We got a farmer to confirm with us yesterday.
Yeah.
Actually, we've done it at his Circle Rock Ranch here in Vashon as well. So we'll do the slaughter at his place.
The other Brandon.
The other Brandon, yeah. He's such a great host. He's a kind of a chef himself, and so he helps us with the slaughter day. He's got a beautiful property on the island. And then we'll do the butchery and charcuterie day here at our place.
Cool.
So sign up on our website, and we'd love to see you. We'd love to meet you.
Yeah.
We have class members now who are Meatsmith members, people who came to classes and then have kind of pursued the continuing education with our membership, and they hook up and they help each other. You were just telling me 2 guys from Southern California were helping each other set up their pig areas. And
yeah, Todd Palmer, who is a member, has kind of become something of a meatsmithing resource down there.
Yeah.
And all small scale stuff, all backyard scale, but expertly done. And Todd's a really handy guy, and so he's got he manufactures stuff. He manufactured a great rabbit ringer for us.
That's right.
That we use. Fabricates, I should say. And he raises American guinea hogs. And he can hook people up with guinea hogs down there, which are a great backyard pig. And that's kind of the idea for the classes. It's the scale is unique because you can learn how to process. Maybe it's even hard to do this, but you can learn how to process animals, at least by textbook, in a way that is more fitting in an industrial production context, right? And quite frankly, that's even like the home-based instructionals and cookbooks on home butchery. They presume a lot of the rules and regulations and standards of a larger production facility. I mean, our policies definitely do that. And the family pig is decisively a smaller scale. It's actually geared entirely towards the home cook in the kitchen. Like in a house and stuff, like where we live, with sharp knives and wood cutting surfaces and very much backyard setup. And the goal is to equip people to do this on their own in their backyard. And it works. People do it. And we see the fruit of their labors all the time in photos and a lot of it through the Meatsmith membership if they stay on. And it's pretty great. And it's not just that, it's a smaller scale. It's not just different in size in terms of the education you get. It's different in kind. Because we want to get the most yield out of a pig for the home kitchen, which is totally different than the best yield for the deli case.
Right.
At the slaughterhouse, or from the slaughterhouse. Totally different. So we're talking about hanging meat in your kitchen to make all of your meals absurdly delicious. And it's also actually a scale and an approach that is more historically rich. It's older. It's where all of the commercial things are diluted versions of what people have been doing in their home kitchens for centuries. So like we are in my home kitchen right now. We just have like a mountain of bacon rinds sitting right next to the computer, and bacon and guanciale scraps I'm looking at, and it's just sitting here at room temperature. You know, this was bacon rind. We cut slices off of this.
What about this guy?
That's a little tiny filetto. It's like we've got a lot of this stuff in here, and this is in our kitchen because we eat this. And it's right next to our wood stove, the chimney to which you can see right behind me. See? That's it. And it's totally shelf stable. It's totally stable until the end of the cosmos in here. We have a prosciutto leg and a guanciale and a slab of bacon hanging up just above us. And it's all stable. And the longer it hangs, the better it tastes. And there is this magical economy on home domestic pork rearing and harvesting that we have lost. And basically we are just so enamored and enriched, our lives are simplified and enriched by this economy that we really like to share it with other people. And that's what the classes are. And it's so fun. It's well within the prowess of a home kitchen. This is not the province of chefs in lab coats. This is basic, simple curing techniques for preservation. No fancy curing chambers. Though a lot of that stuff, you know, has a place, but... Oh, Therese.
She's getting out of control.
You are
here.
making a mess.
I think it's time to ship her off to my mom's.
Okay, you're going to get shipped off.
Yep.
Lady. You're rubbing banana all over the place.
Okay, so I have to take a pause here.
Back.
We're back. Gosh. I guess that's what happens when you lay a baby down and they wake up right before you're supposed to record.
Yes.
And then they wake up.
I think that's what Shakespeare meant by the witching hour. That's the hour when babies wake up from naps. It's the very hour when you need to start something.
Yeah. So we got through announcing the classes.
Family Pig, sign up for Family Pig.
Yeah.
The harvests will be Gloucester Old Spots that are right out there. We raise here on the property.
Brandon's
and
might
maybe
be
a couple from Brandon, which is on Vashon.
Yeah.
Technically Maury, but they're connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do come. And let's just start talking about skinning.
Okay.
Let's talk about skinning from a metaphysical level.
Oh boy. Okay.
This is our one. Well, you know, because we just fall into that naturally. Like with smoking, we were talking about there's religious and philosophical overtones that can't be helped be mentioned.
Yeah, it's either like the human burden or obsession or coping mechanism or divine revelation. It's something in us that we quickly abstract things.
Yes.
We go there.
Well, we've been thinking about epistemologically the difference between univocal, equivocal, and analogical understanding. And everything is begging to
be analogized.
Be analogized. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah.
So skinning an animal.
Yeah.
It's such a human act.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do it all the time.
Right.
When you do find yourself doing it, it's begging to be thought about. Yeah. And, well, I was thinking about our primordial stories, you know, and human stories, and Adam and Eve, when they were taken from the garden, they had to be covered.
That's right.
At that point.
When they were kicked out.
Yes. And what they covered themselves with was the skin of an animal.
That's right. So somebody slaughtered an animal.
Yeah, death had to happen.
And because you can't skin them unless you kill them.
Right. Hopefully not. Yeah.
It's harder. It's harder to skin a live animal. And so I think that would be Elohim, the creator.
That
was the first one to kill and skin an animal, and then clothe his disobedient creatures.
You think Elohim did it, not Adam?
I don't know. I've always assumed it was God.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I guess I never thought
he
about
clothed them, I think is the idea. But I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, we could look up the text. We don't have to right now, but...
Considering how Adam acted up to that point, I don't know if he had the personal fortitude to kill an animal at that moment.
Yeah.
He was... Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a bit...
Chutzpah or kutzpah?
Yeah. He'd fallen short a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if killing was in the cards for him. Well, at least as the narrative goes, it wasn't until later that meat eating really even became a thing.
Okay.
So, I don't, Yeah.
Well, when you skin an animal, it definitely changes that animal from animal to meat. Like, just when you look at it.
As if someone pulled back the veil.
Right.
One could say.
Yes. Yeah.
And there is this strange etymological connection, and I don't know if it's real, but you've heard of vellum.
Oh.
Vellum, V-E-L-L-U-M.
Okay.
Is parchment made of animal hide, upon which things have been written in antiquity. And I think the oldest one we have actually... So the hide of an animal, scraped, tanned in some way and cleaned, and it's this beautiful white parchment, and it takes ink. You can write on it very clearly. A lot of the ancient illuminated or medieval illuminated manuscripts are vellum, and one of the oldest Codex Vaticanus, the oldest Greek translations of the Old and New Testament, is from the 4th century. Which is crazy to think that animal skin can last that long. Yeah. But it is, and it's vellum, written on vellum.
Wow.
Vellum, I think, coming from the Latin for calf.
Oh.
From which we get veal.
I was thinking veil.
I know.
Oh, okay.
That's the connection that I was wondering about.
Okay.
How if there is one there, I don't know.
Okay.
Someone would have to look that up.
Yeah. Maybe if there's an etymologist... Other wordsmiths watching this, write it down in the comments. See if you've got any.
Yeah, veil.
Okay, so veil, actually, the animal skin itself, but then the fact that it's used for text too. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something there.
Which is weird. The word made flesh.
Oh my gosh.
There's a couple connections there. Word written on flesh.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. And especially since veal calf was, the yearling bull was the sacrifice of atonement. The annual big deal sacrifice. The big one. Was essentially a veal.
Well, okay. So then you also think that it becomes text. It also becomes clothing.
Yeah.
Which is like a veil for ourselves and our bodies.
Yeah.
And... there's something to that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because Adam went for leaves first, right?
Right. Well, the fig.
He grabbed the fig,
that's right.
Because it has that accommodating shape.
Yes.
For the male anatomy.
Okay.
Adam was a univocist. He's like, that's a silhouette of. Oh yeah. Something like that. I don't know.
God's like, oh God, come on.
And then so he went to the leaves first, and then I think God put them in skins.
Okay,
that's
a really good argument.
They needed to be better outfitted to toil in the field and to extract their living from the earth through pain.
Yeah.
and thorn and weed,
Yeah.
the whole deal. That requires
Leather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. I was just watching, because I'm reading Lord of the Rings right now. That's a whole nother thing. But, and so I've kind of been perking up on YouTube, seeing if there's little Lord of the Rings commentaries, and I stumbled on Jonathan Pajot.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard of Jonathan Pajot, he's got his own YouTube channel, The Symbolic World.
Yeah, it's great.
It's really good. He dives deep into a lot of things, but he was doing a commentary on Lord of the Rings and the ring, and trying to talk about the symbolic meaning of this ring. And he was talking about clothing, of which a ring could be said it's like the ornamentation. Yeah. It's an ornamenting kind of clothing item.
Yeah.
And clothing is, it's a very primordial technology that we've created for ourselves. It's like one of the first technologies that we've used to, well, technology itself is something that enhances our being.
Yeah.
But if we're not careful, it can detract from our being.
Yeah.
And thus, the invisibility part of the ring. If it's too powerful and it's just detracting from us, then we no longer see ourselves.
You vanish. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, just thinking of that with clothes.
There's even this great quote from Tolkien talking about technology, because that's clearly a huge feature of the Lord of the Rings and of Sauron's whole mission.
And Saruman, what he does with technology.
Yes, the implement. And I keep trying to find this quote, and I just can't find it anywhere. I've searched for it, but I remember reading it, and it just stuck in my head. I think it was in a letter to his son, but that we have to be wary of technology because it constantly threatens to dull the edge of human nature. And I love that image, is that the human being is a knife.
Yeah.
And a knife that works well is sharp. Yeah. And if you have too many crutches, if you have too many helps or aids or comforts in between you and the product of your work and your labor, your edge is going to get dull.
Yes.
And you'll find yourself invisible, or in some way incapacitated from your original sharpness. And I love that. And that's a constant balance. And that's why, I think about that a lot. To how not to be devoured by your technology. Well, I guess one of the ultimate ways to frame it, how not to be mastered by your technology, but to be the master of it, is the key. Not so much to be low tech. That's the maturity that I've pretended to take upon myself as I get older. It's not just, hey, let's be low tech and only use axes and crosscut saws or whatever. It's actually a little more complicated than that, because you can become the slave of being low tech. Yeah. And that can even dull your edges, because it'll cause you to sacrifice higher duties to that. And you can be mastered by it. And so it's more an issue of don't be mastered by the tech, master it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I love Tom Bombadil.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I know.
Because he was so immune to the temptation of the ring that he could flip it on his finger and make it disappear and do tricks with it. I know. And they couldn't do that in the movie because it would kind of mess with the diegesis they were trying to create. But in the book, he was utterly immune.
Yeah. It kind of knocks your breath away when you're reading it. And you're like, whoa, no, but this is, you're so whimsical with it. Yeah. And it's such a serious thing for regular people.
Because, old Tom is his own master.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's his thing.
Yeah.
But I kept interrupting you several times.
No. That's all good. This is all, I'm just trying to, these are things. Do you, when you're skinning an animal, do you think this way at all? Or are you just
the one thing, that is very clear to me is the veil thing. Yeah. Is that on so many levels, the creature is totally inedible with all that hair on it. It's just, because it's not just hair, it's poop and mud and all the things that the creature has been living in. And you have to pull back the veil. You have to get to what you need, to get to the meat of the matter. So it is that amazing difference. And if I usually have spectators, and that's always the thing that they remark on. If they remark on anything, it's, oh, that looks like food now.
Right.
Once we get the skin off.
It's recognizable.
Yeah. And it's also, the skin is also where the individuating features are, the unique coloration of each animal.
Oh, right.
Even the facial features are much more recognizable when the head has the skin on it. And you take it off, and it's like, it erases that, that individuality.
Let's talk about, because we've been talking about veil in other contexts of our life, and veiling something, it's not actually hiding it.
Right. Yeah.
Which is what we're kind of told by the univicists, who take things literally. That's a very literalistic way of understanding the world.
Yeah.
Having to constantly explain the joke, or constantly not use colloquialisms, or getting mad at people who, conversate flippantly with colloquialisms. Like, this is how humans speak. Humans know things by an analogy. And so veiling can come off like you're hiding something.
Yeah.
But there is this weird thing that happens when you veil something. You kind of understand it, and maybe on a deeper level than if you just expose things right away.
Right.
There's a mystery. I think that might be an operative word here.
Yeah.
Mystery is, and being okay with that mystery. And gosh, this applies to every part of life. I mean,
the veil itself is, it is the translation, if you're going to be Platonic about it. It is the translation of, a transcendent form into the language of human dialogue, commerce, something that we can understand. But we're usually unsatisfied with it because a veil also is pointing beyond itself so obviously.
Right.
It's so obviously elliptical, right? It's so obviously abridged, and it's not the whole reality. There's more there. Yeah. And it's so easy to be like, well, just show me it all. It's like, well, the thing about that is, and there's a whole novel about this. C.S. Lewis has a novel called Till We Have Faces, where he talks about that. This is the story of the whole novel. So this is a spoiler alert. I'm going to give you the whole thing, but you should still read it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But we assert the right to see the mystery face to face.
Yes.
Like, let's get it clear. I want to penetrate all the way to the bottom of the whatever it is. I mean,
transparency.
Yeah,
that's the word that we spout all the time now.
And we want to see it face to face. And the problem not so much is that the veil is hiding something from us. And that's kind of, in literature, the satanic objection. Like, well, he's hiding it on purpose. He doesn't want you to know. Because he knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like gods. But really, he doesn't want the competition, so he's concealing this from you. So the veil is 100% concealment from the satanic perspective. But that's not all that a veil is. It's actually a bringing something down to us so that you can come up to it face to face, but you can't. The only reason you can't penetrate all the way to its depths of its mystery is not because it's being hidden. It's because you don't have a face. That's the right. Whole, you think you do. And there's the self-referential quality to being able to know your own limitations. And I think I'm looking at this through a microscope. And that is convincing me that I understand it because I know of its component parts. And this is what is so annoying to me with a new atheist perspective. We're Catholics, by the way, so definitely believing in God. So, but the new atheist perspective is so frustrating because they think they confuse description with final cause, with ontology,
Oh, right.
with metaphysics.
Okay.
They think that their analytical description-based knowledge of a cell explains its being. And it's like, what shallow notion of being do you have? It's such a simple differentiation for me to see that the more you define something, the closer you look at it, the more transparent it becomes to you. All you're doing is discovering more things to explain. Like you haven't explained it. You're just looking at more stuff, which is wonderful. And so,
But it's a way of scientific knowledge. It's not
yeah,
the entire way to understand something.
no. And so there's this constant like breakdown in the dialogue between atheists and deists or theists that is so frustrating to me, where the atheists think that the theists don't want to see the things, right? All the details and all the realities. They want to chalk up the things they don't understand to an imaginary, fictitious deity, right? Because it makes them more comfortable with their life. And it's like, you know what? No one does that. And it actually doesn't work at all. And it's so stupid that no one has ever done it, like really ever, that I know of. Maybe, I don't know. So if you look at the history of religious thought and philosophy, it is actually a very calculated, rigorous, not lazy, like, oh, cosmic skyhook, I'm just going to postulate that and everything's going to be fine. No.
Yeah.
Have you read Aristotle? Like, do you know how hard it is to think this way analytically and rationally, and to come to a why?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
to explain all the what's. And I feel like our scientific discourse and mode of knowledge is very it emphasizes the what and then stops. It's like that okay, yeah, that's part of it. Why? You know. Anyway, why are we talking about that? Oh, veil.
Skinning.
And yeah, because I
veil.
feel like that's there's something about the nature of the veil and of thinking univocally that our modern age is really literalist. And I think that this cuts across all left or right, you know, political spectrums, even a lot of religious spectrums. It's very univocal. And we bias the factoid. And we think that it is true because of its lucidity and of its unveiled nature. And we think we've got it all down. And I actively search for historical accounts of animal husbandry, harvesting, and cooking that have the aura of what moderns would call error. About them, because that is so interesting. Because they weren't afraid to integrate raising a lamb into their entire worldview and like the entire domestic order and philosophy, whereas modern guides are so boring because it is an isolated scientific process. Step 1, knife here. Step 2, knife there. You know, sterilize everything. And the proof to me that this literalist, you know, overly transparent scientific way of doing things doesn't work is that it doesn't taste good.
Sure. Yeah.
So you lose flavor, okay? You lose the poetry. And poetry in agriculture and in livestock is flavor. And you lose analogical reasoning. And so you just say, you must cook all your pork at 160 degrees Fahrenheit or you will contract trichina. And it's like, well, wait a second. And the other thing that is so telling to me is that they keep changing the rules. And so built into the literalist approach to agriculture and harvesting and cookery is we are not wrong. So there's no self-reflection at all. And yet they must keep revising the textbooks and keep revising the rules because they find that they were wrong, right? Which is a good thing. Of course you need to do that. But I'm saying built into it is this authoritative, we've looked at it through a microscope, we therefore know this is the way it is. And it's very limiting, and it doesn't taste so good.
Yeah, I've been studying this a little bit, sort of the philosophy of science that has changed over the last couple of centuries. And there has been the idea for a while now that the way that you understand something is by dissecting it. I think you've said this in more or less words, but you dive deeper into it, you cut it open, you kill it, you know, if it's a biological thing, you kill it, and then it becomes a lab specimen, you know. One person who actually challenged all this was Jane Goodall. And she said the way you understand a group of gorillas, let's say, is not by killing them or picking them up out of their native habitat, picking them up and dropping them into a zoo, and then maybe killing a couple or splicing into them. You know, like you observe in their home habitat, and it's a more passive way, but it's no less rich. But you take in what they are giving you, rather than, you know, murdering
to dissect, as William Wordsworth would say.
Exactly. Now, one could say, aren't we slaughtering animals? You know, we are killing them. However, what is the purpose of the killing? Is it to understand? Maybe, but certainly not. Not for, well, the reason we're trying to understand is we're trying to consume. And I would argue maybe not just a pure materialistic consummation. But for other reasons. There's more mystery involved. It's more festivity involved. It's not just a material activity that's happening when we feed people the way we do. If we were trying to just fill the hole, then use science to just you know, then you have the whole industrial food complex. But if we're trying to do something more than that, then we have to change our slaughter methods and our
well, and the cool thing about it is that these impulses don't run at cross purposes. It's not like you have to be unscientific in order to cook good food. Absolutely not. Just add a little self-referentiality, a little self-reflexiveness into it.
Maybe less scientistic.
But that, I even like looking up old books that are out of print on domestic livestock raising, or even like histories of domestication, and they're out of print because they're considered to be erroneous. But for me, they're part of the context that creates the recipes and the methods that I love, and that did work really well, even if there are some particular errors, you know, just factual errors, which there definitely are, or like taxonomical errors in their thinking. They are that would have been the context that gave birth to more sustainable grazing methods. Like, well, they were getting something right to do that, you know. So, all of that to say, you know, skin your sheep.
Well, no, I was thinking one more thing. I was thinking while you were talking, and that is because we're talking about veiling, and veiling actually can, if you switch your mindset, it can help you understand a thing. And it's interesting that God veiled us with the skin of animals now, and to help us understand each other more. You know, knowing post-fall now, we're not at the intellectual capacity that we had been. But maybe through veiling, we can now understand each other better, even male, female, and understand ourselves more.
Clothing is definitely...
Otherwise, we become univocists, and we're like,
well, clothing,
what's going on now?
Clothing is a good example of that because it's very expressive. No one would say that that's why, you know, oppressive societies that want to erase individuality enforce uniforms, right? Even men and women dressing the same. But
Or they enforce also promiscuity too.
Yeah. But clothing does express individuality.
Yeah.
So that is a veil that actually reveals something.
Yes.
Of the individual.
Yes. Right. It's the technology that.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's not erasing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the individuating feature on animals also. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, people know their favorite animals by the spots that they have, or the longer or shorter tails that they have.
Yeah. John Baptiste asks a question. How did we come to this subject? Big question.
Yeah.
John.
We go on such a rabbit trail. I know. This is such the luxury. No kids in the house.
I know.
We're in by the stove.
You know what it is?
This is just us having fun.
We haven't talked to each other in 7 days, and we've been in the same house the whole time. That's what this is.
I know. There's like 20 inches of snow outside. I've been yelling at the kids and bring in firewood and like help us wash the dishes before the electricity goes out again. And it's been crazy. Yeah. How many people do you know you would say truly share your back to the land values? Or your passion for home-scale craft meat curing? Or simply love the multifaceted beauty of a good meal as obsessively as you do? Maybe a handful? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created an online community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world and a platform for them to learn from and inspire one another. In addition to our major semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Pacific Northwest homestead, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources years deep now, for you to dive deeper into your food journey with. And both our classes and online program include access to our private community Facebook page for your continued education and fellowship. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you, putting the knife in your hand, article by article, and comment thread by comment thread, and can support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
Yeah.
We're talking about skinning and hopefully eviscerating if we can get to it.
Yeah. I would say skinning is tricky. Of all the things I teach, this is the hardest thing.
Really?
Yes. For people to get. And it's the fiddliest with your fingers. And I think the reason is that of all the things that we teach, from slaughtering pigs to slaughtering goats and poultry, butchery, curing even, all of that stuff is picked up and apprehended relatively quickly, and people leave the class thinking, I got it on everything except skinning. They usually leave the class thinking, gosh, I got to do that several more times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a visceral thing.
And you know, it's like they leave the class saying, all right, I know what I need to do, which we'll describe. Mm-hmm. But before I can feel like I'm making progress, you have to practice. And that's because it is something that requires more than anything tactile repetition and familiarity. It is it's tactile. It's all about what it feels on your fingers and against the knife.
You have to build up kind of some musculature
too.
It's kind of like getting calluses on your fingers when you play a guitar or something. Only it's like you got to build up these muscles.
Yeah.
You're actually quite strong with these. Is it your thumb too, or is it the four fingers?
Yeah, it's your thumb too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on your left hand too, if you're right-handed.
Yeah. For me, I only grab the hide with my left hand because the knife is always in my right.
Right.
And it's always clean.
That's what we'll talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So So where we ended with our podcast last time was you killed the animal.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what do you do?
Yeah. And this was last time I recommended people go watch Nick Kirsten Vukojevic or something.
Oh, okay.
On how to skin a beef.
Oh.
Because he's got it. And I described some of it, but really it's a visual thing. Mm-hmm. And I want to encourage people to actually, like, if you're going to do a beef cow, his videos are great, Nick's are, because they are only 10 minutes long, and you could actually copy every step. And you shouldn't feel bad about doing that. I don't know, maybe it's like my generation where it's like, well, yeah, I got this from YouTube. It's like, yeah, you got it. You got it.
Yeah.
From YouTube, and it was free.
Don't apologize for it. Yeah.
Do it.
This is the wonder of technology.
Yeah. It's incredible. And I say every step because every step is calculated. It's like when someone who's really good at something is doing it, and they're, in that flow state or whatever, there's no throwaway steps. There's no wasted energy. In fact, one movement is usually accomplishing 2 or 3 things. And I actually think that's the basis of magic. Like, that's what magic is.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of that when you watch something that is someone that is very good at what they do. Mm-hmm. It's so inspiring. It's just mesmerizing. Mm-hmm. And so don't underestimate the degree to which you can find a video of someone doing a good job skinning. We have Meatsmith members we have a video on there of skinning sheep and goats. But I go a lot slower through it because I want to describe it. Uh-huh. But you can find those videos and truly do imitate them. Mm-hmm. And if you give yourself several tries, you will very quickly become proficient. But I was saying it was fiddly and tricky because it's tactile and requires familiarity. And so with beef, most of the skinning happens with a knife.
Okay.
There's a little bit, we talked about siding the beef last time, and you start to hoist up the entire cow, and when the guts are out, basically, you can pull some of the hide off of the back, but then you're still kind of finishing it with the knife around the neck, usually. Mm-hmm. There's no fisting on a cowhide. There's maybe pulling. Some guys rig up like another winch to pull the hide off under extreme strength, lots of torque. I don't have that. And because of that, beef skinning knives are bigger. I brought some props. This is like a 7-inch beef skinner, I think. And the thing about this and all skinning knives is they are designed, the key element of the design is the angle of the blade relative to the handle. Mm-hmm. That's the distinguishing feature. And this is a lamb skinning knife. And
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing about it is, it's not necessarily, this is not a trick. So right here, this is not the ring of power, this beef skinning knife. It's not going to make it easy. Uh-huh. It's not. If you're having a hard time skinning, you're like, man, if I only had a beef skinning knife, this would be easy. It's like, no, actually, you need to have a sharp beef skinning knife. Yes. And I would rather skin a whole beef with a sharp chef's knife than a dull skinning knife. Yeah. Honestly. So sharpness is so far and above the number one asset that shape almost doesn't matter relative to sharpness. The only value of this structure of that canted blade relative to the angle is that it more efficiently and ergonomically delivers sharpness to your working surface. Mm-hmm. And in the case of a beef cow, for siding beef, what that means is you're pulling on the hide with your dirty hand, and you're siding down, and you're actually running the knife not directly between flesh and hide. You're not like finding where they part and putting your knife in there. That's the thing you're not doing. Mm-hmm. You are actually pulling with a good deal of tension, and this is what is really exhausting, actually, if you do a lot of them in a row. You're pulling with a lot of tension, and you're cutting down on the hide just outside of the fell, which is the muscle that's just under the hide that you want to stay on the carcass, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So you want to pull on the hide, and you're cutting on the hide just like 1/8 of an inch, sometimes 1/4 of an inch, just outside of the fell. Yeah. And if you look close enough, you'll see it. And what you're cutting is fascia. It's clear, it's not as obvious to the naked eye because it's the same color as the inside of the hide. But if you look real close, you'll see, oh, I'm cutting those stretching fascia, those little clingy bits that are holding the hide onto the carcass. That's what you want to cut. And if you do that, you won't leave big globs of matambre, or that fell muscle, on the hide. And that's what this canted angle is all about. It's just it's more ergonomic. And it means that you have the entire length of the sharpened edge, all almost probably on a 7-inch blade, 5 inches of it, you are using to achieve that separation between hide and carcass. If this were a boning knife that went straight up, if the dimension of the blade was continuous and straight with the handle and then had a little bull nose at top, like most boning knives do, you would be skinning the entire beef with that little tiny bull nose.
Right.
Quickly dulling the knife.
Like an inch and a half length.
Less, yeah. And so this just extends that curvature all the way through the entire blade.
That makes sense.
Which means you have a lot more sharpness to deal with.
Okay. So you just have more, like you just said, more sharpness to deal with, meaning that you will have to sharpen your knife less often.
Much less, yeah.
Because it's spreading out.
Yeah, and I would say it's worth it. You know, I always recommend getting high carbon steel cutlery, antique, source it. If you're going to be doing any skinning with regularity, I would get, a skinning knife. One that has this canted angle with relation between the handle of the knife and the blade. It's just so much more efficient at delivering sharpness to your cutting surface.
Yeah. That's almost it. I mean, we could go home like that. Like a sharp knife is the key to effectual skinning.
It really is. Yeah. And if you are doing lots of skinning and you're still frustrated and having a hard time with it, it's because your knife is dull. I can almost say that with certainty. It's not you anymore, Yeah. I would say it's even hard to get good at skinning if your knife is dull. You just won't.
Yeah.
Because you're getting bad feedback from your primary cutting tool. Your primary cutting tool is mastering you. You are the slave of your dull knife. If you want to master it, then you must sharpen it.
Yeah.
And then you get really clear feedback from the knife. You know exactly what's going on because it's actually not that complex. If you think that when you apply the knife to the flesh or anything, if you envision a certain result and it doesn't happen, it's probably the knife. It's not you.
Yeah.
You are correct. And the problem with a dull knife is that it makes you start to doubt yourself.
Yes.
But it's actually the ring of power.
It feels
dominating you. Yeah.
Right. It's like any other tool when you're typing on a laptop and it's going slow and you don't realize it at first and you're fighting the laptop.
Yeah.
It's the laptop.
Yeah.
Like just change your laptop or something. It's or close down your applications and reset the thing. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not you. It's the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. But I think that's mostly what I wanted to say with beef skinning.
Can you talk really quick about? Well, just while we're talking about the skinning part, because you mentioned the activity of skinning. It looks like you're going to cut the hide.
Right.
But you're really just separating the fascia from the hide.
Yes.
And you're not like putting the knife between the two areas.
Between
part of why you're doing that is you will yield a much cleaner hide and more meat on the carcass.
Exactly, that's why.
And it's much prettier and it actually feels more gratifying, like you've done a good job.
Yeah.
And it's not as messy looking. There's no fat and like globs of flesh on the hide.
Yes.
Which will, if you want to, salt the hide and use it later, that'll make that easier.
Yeah.
It'll feel smoother.
Yeah.
That's also a reason why you're doing that.
Yeah, that's it. Those are all the reasons.
Yeah.
Those are really good.
You'll see the flank left on the carcass, which will yield more meat.
Flank, yeah.
Yeah. So you always know when you see an amateur skinning an animal, whether it's a deer or a sheep, the flank is never on the carcass.
Right. Yeah. There's no connection between that fell muscle, the twitchy muscle, that's just under the subcutaneous muscle, just under the skin that twitches the side of the animal to shoo a fly. That will have been removed in most cases of an amateurish. I like the word amateur. It means motivated by love.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I know.
Yeah.
So I hate to use that, but an inexperienced,
Yeah.
someone that's still trying to figure it out, that connecting flank will be removed.
Yeah.
And you see this especially in a lot of venison.
Yes.
So it's hard to describe, but you'll see like huge, wide, the hips look abnormally wide.
Right.
And then this little tiny spine, right? And then the rib cage. And it's because they basically removed the flank, or this fell muscle that we're talking about, with the hide.
Which is a nice muscle to eat, right?
It is. Not only is it tasty, but underneath it is a significant amount of fat. Layering. Like that's the belly. So the fell muscle on a lamb or a goat is one of the primary streaks in bacon.
Exactly.
Know what I mean?
Right.
So it's part of the belly meat, the fat meat layering that you get on a belly of a quadruped. And it's a primary streak. So you don't want to get rid of that. It is a loss of fat and of meat.
So, go ahead.
It's also tedious. So that's actually like the whole point of the skinning thing, really, is if we're going to move into goats and venison and sheep now, retention of the fell is the thing.
While we're on beef real quick, though, you will leave the animal on the ground, right? Or is there...
Yeah, and we talked about that last time.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
You talked about...
Yeah.
Okay.
The beef will be on its back, all four legs up. You can rig up a little trussle, or you could just like put a stone on either shoulder just to keep it on its back. I have yet to be diligent enough to create my own little trestle to keep the beef square on its back with all four legs sticking up.
Yeah.
But, take off the head, take off the pin bones and the foot, the hoofs, and then you begin skinning. One long cut right down the center.
Yeah.
From neck all the way to rectum, to anus.
Wow.
Yeah, all the way. And then you can start one back leg. And see, you're not walking back and forth on the carcass. Start from the head side, right?
Right.
And then go all the way down. Pop off the two front pin bones. Knife all the way to the rear end. Right? Knock off the back, the rear pin bones. And by the way, I hope I'm saying those right. It's the shins. It's the pin bones. The bones right above the hoof. You can skin those, and they make excellent stock.
Okay.
So they're great for that. You don't have to just chuck them. You would want to get the hooves off, unless you want to go into cleaning it and popping the nails off of the hooves, which can be done.
Whoa.
It's like scalding a pig. Like you can still buy calves' feet or like a veal foot or veal head with hide intact.
Whoa.
From like a French charcutier to make your veal stock.
Oh my god.
Very special veal stock. So that's a whole thing.
Sounds Frenchy.
Yeah. But then you're at the back end, you've popped off the pin bones, and then, it's a seaming job. You create zippers, and you go from where you took off the pin bone, and you seam down to the central line you made up the hide, up the middle of the whole carcass. And then you peel back the hide off of that back leg. Do the same thing on the other one. And you basically get the hide all the way down towards the anus and down off of the two Achilles tendons all the way and down past even the patella, the knee joint, and then you start going on the sides. And just as in beef, this echoes across all of them, lamb and goat. When you start the siding, which we talked about in the last episode, you are pulling pretty stoutly on the hide with your dirty non-knife hand, and you are cutting on the hide. Like the hide is a cutting board. And as you do that, just above where it connects to the meat, as you do that, the meat will peel away from it. It's fleecing, siding, you're fleecing it. And the meat will peel away as you pull, and it requires constant tension. You keep constant tension on the hide, and you do that. And you'll notice that the hide is nice and clean, and all the meat is staying on the carcass. And it's the same thing with a lamb or a goat. And, because this is a podcast, I can only go so far in verbally describing how to do it. But the key feature to all skinning, and I would say it's even more imperative with lamb, goat, or venison, is retaining the fel, that muscle that connects the back leg with the ribs. It's a long muscle, and it's very thin, and it's right up against the hide. And more than anything, it wants to stay with the hide. And your job is to get in between, and so that fel muscle stays on the meat, because it's not just the fel. That fel is connected to a seam, to fascia that wraps around the entire carcass of the animal. And the thing about that seam, in between that fel and its attendant fascia and the hide, is that it's peelable, it's fistable, it's pullable. If you're not in that seam, then you basically have to knife off everything. It's not peelable. Because you'll notice if you miss that seam and you start pushing and tugging and pulling on the hide, now you're taking away huge chunks of fat.
Yeah.
Like you're just denuding the meat. You're taking off all the fat. And
that will end up being
as
on
you're
your ribs.
pushing it with your fist, if you're fisting, you're just coating your entire forearm in grease. It's a mess. It's very messy. And so the number one trick, and if you get to this seam on any hided animal, you can work your way through the rest of the skinning. You can figure it out, knowing that the priority is get to that seam, that particular seam. And the way you get to it, and you can actually access it kind of anywhere on the carcass, but the way you do it is what we've already described. You can cut a strip with your knife, some means of entry. I call them zippers because you open up the hide like a jacket, but you cut a line just the depth of the hide with your knife, not into the meat, and then you pull open that cut, and then you put your knife on the stretchy white stuff as you pull with a lot of strength.
Yeah, that's the hide right there.
Yeah, okay. And then you only cut the stretchy white stuff, and then eventually you just cut directly on the hide, and it looks like you're just raking your knife on the hide.
Yeah.
But what you're actually doing is releasing the clear little fascia connections that are holding the hide to the carcass. And that's it. That's how you access that seam. And the reason to do that is because it's much more efficient to peel/fist, driving your fist in between carcass and flesh, or carcass and hide. It's much more efficient to skin that way than it is to knife off every inch. Knifing it off is messier, and it's more wasteful and sticky and greasy, and it's not fun.
Yeah, it is. It's counterintuitive when you're in there, because I've done it a couple times, just here and there. But you really have to go against your instinct to cut on the carcass. You really just, it's like that faith. I'm gonna cut this hide, and then whoa! Oh my gosh! Magically, like
it peels away.
It peels away. Yeah.
The flesh peels away and stays on the carcass.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
And I think what I find with the students is the hardest thing is maintaining that tension where you're constantly pulling the hide away. And the more you do it, the better you get, so the less pulling you have to do. What you find is there's entry points for fisting. So if you just start the hide removal with the knife on a few key spots in the right seam, then you can sheathe the knife and just go with your fist, and now you're removing hide by huge swaths.
Yeah.
Or even just pulling.
Yeah.
And it's way quicker.
Yeah.
Way quicker. So
it's almost like you're leaving a little veil on the animal.
Yeah. Well, that's where the fat is, right?
The fat and the meat and
yeah. And again, that's leaving that veil on also means you are leaving a lot of fat on.
Yes.
And it's no accident, too. A lot of guys skin the way they do because they don't want the fat at all. And so it's almost like a way to pre-trim the carcass before it ever even gets into the cutting table.
Oh, interesting.
You're just kind of removing a ton of fat.
Yeah.
Venison gets treated that way a lot because venison fat gets a bad name. But I take a lot of pleasure in taking something that has an excess of fat. Like, come on, really? 2 inches of fat all the way around the entire neck of the lamb.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? We're going to eat that. You're actually not going to trim any of it? The answer is yes, we're not going to trim any. No, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but we're not trimming the fat.
Yeah.
And a great example of this is I just slaughtered a couple of very fat, I guess they'd be hoggets, technically, which are, they were 2 years old. So maybe that makes them mutton. Oh yeah, but they were a couple of rams, St. Croix, raised here on Vashon very lovingly by a family, an orchardist and a cider maker, and just fat, happy, huge. I mean, their hanging weight was over 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So hanging was 112 pounds, I think, on one of them, which means that live they were 200-pound animals. They're big for sheeps. And so wonderful, so delicious. But we're talking like fatty pig proportions of fat on these animals. You know, inches. Fat in the form of inches.
I think you posted a couple pictures of them on our Instagram.
On Instagram,
account.
I put some chops up on the Instagram feed and lots of fat. And the deal with fat is when you get a carcass like that, when you have an animal like that, you still want to skin it in the seam that we're referencing because you still want to keep all the fat on the carcass. Not only because in the field when you're skinning, it's gross to be covered in oil and grease, but the best place to deal with that fat, I would say, is not necessarily the butcher shop. It's the kitchen.
Okay.
That's where you deal with that fat, okay? And I'm not saying you got to eat solid bites of fat.
Yeah.
Even though you should probably try it a few times.
Yeah.
But you want to accompany it with things.
Yeah.
What fat needs is what you need in order to eat lots of fat, which is just another way of saying to eat everything, to not just waste stuff. What you need is tanginess, sourliness, crispiness, crunchiness. So any accompaniment that fits in that category facilitates the eating of more fat. So, even, fermented vegetables. I would say if we're going to distill it even more, it's sour and crisp. You need crispy. And so, like, I even find, I grow romaine lettuce whenever we have a garden. I really try because I love the crisp, the crunch of romaine really helps. It's balance and harmonize with the soft yielding richness of fat. Yeah. And mustard, of course, you always want mustard there. Fried bread can offer a good crunchy counter to super fat meat. So deal with it in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so I say the best way to deal with a fat carcass is not to trim it, but to cook it appropriately.
Yes.
Without trimming any of the fat. And so fat is like this incredible gift on a carcass. It's basically permission to cook it however you want, knowing that it's going to be great. Because you can't mess up something that's really fatty. Go ahead, try. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't mess it up.
Yeah.
Unless you no, I can't even think of a way, actually.
You can't.
Yeah. It's forgiveness.
Yes.
Fat is forgiveness.
And it doesn't mean that you end up eating pure fat, like you said.
Right.
Or like if it's all rendered, you don't just like spoonful fat into your mouth. Like that's a little over.
It's a medium.
But what you do is you save it. So like we saved a bunch of the lamb fat from the roast neck that you did.
So we roasted a lamb neck. And that's a pint of tallow.
That's right.
But it's tallow that's flavored with garlic and white wine.
Oh, I know.
It's very nice.
Oh, it smells so good. Wow.
And rosemary. Yeah, it's awesome. So what you can think about...
French fries.
Yeah, you could deep fry French fries in that thing. But you want to think about whatever cooking method you're going to use, take the fat into account and realize that the fat is forgiveness, and that whatever cooks with a ton of fat on it will taste better thereby.
Yeah.
And so with this particular one, we roasted a lamb neck.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We roasted it. Roasting is the
Not
application.
braising.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lamb neck is the toughest. Okay, maybe shanks are a little tougher, but it is the toughest cut of meat on the lamb. Super tough.
Yeah.
Lots of fascia, lots of individual muscles encased in extremely tough cartilaginous sheaths that, like if you were to pan fry a steak of a lamb neck, you'd just be chewing on it all day. It's rubber. It's super tough. So you got to break it down. And usually braising is the best way to break something down low and slow and liquid in a lower temperature.
Submerged in liquid.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, the thing about a fat animal is that it comes ready-made with its own braising medium.
Yes.
Which is fat.
Yeah.
And so I just put the lamb neck in a pot. It took me 5 seconds to do this, which is good because that's about all the time I have to prepare dinner. And I had to do it at lunchtime, though. You just put the whole lamb neck in a pot. I put some salt on it. I put it was like an ounce of the last part of a bottle of white wine. I just dumped it in there.
Yeah.
And then I took a whole bulb of garlic, so many cloves, the whole thing. And if a bulb had an equator, that's where I cut it. You just cut it right in half.
Open up all the
crosswise,
cloves.
opens up all the cloves, throw that in there.
Yeah.
And then I found some dried rosemary and crumbled that up on there. Put the lid on the pot, put it in the oven at 300 degrees.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah.
There's no way to overcook it. You can't do it too long. And normally, it was ready by dinner.
Yeah. And normally when I do lamb necks, it's like I have to submerge it in stock, wine, maybe beer, maybe some extra fat. It's not this ready to go cut of meat, but leaving the fat on, it made the whole process so effortless.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it imbues it with so much flavor. So when it came out of the oven, it was basically like confit lamb.
Yeah.
It was lamb meat cooked in fat right up against the bone, so that adds flavor. And the fat a lot of it had melted, so what was like 1.5 inches, 2 inches of fat along the outside of the entire neck shrank way down to 3/4 of an inch. And it was so delicious and flavorful. And
it was so rich that when you think about it, a lamb neck feeding our entire family.
Yes.
Plus leftovers.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even eat the whole thing.
The lamb neck was not big, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it was from a big lamb.
Big lamb.
So it was bigger than most necks, but
it was like 2 pounds.
If it had not had that fat, we would have blown through that thing and been still hungry. But it kind of stretched out the caloric,
It fed 7. And there was a ready-made sauce in the bottom of the pan. Done. Sauce covered. And we had it with rice.
Yeah.
And the meat was just falling apart tender. You could just slip the bones out and the meat was falling off. I chopped it up so we could portion it to everybody. And then I put the chopped up meat back in the pot where the unctuous, fatty, garlicky, rosemary imbued tallow was. And everyone got lamb meat that way. And we actually had some leftovers, which is astounding. And it was so delicious. And really, the prized part of the entire roast was definitely the lamb meat, but by the end of the meal, we were competing for the garlic cloves.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Because they were garlic, like confit in lamb tallow.
And that was the tangy,
exactly.
that you're talking about. Yeah.
They were so good. Oh my gosh.
They weren't spicy at all, but they had that garlicky tang.
Sweet. Super sweet.
They were caramelized. Yeah.
And completely tender and confit in the lamb tallow.
Yeah.
So I think that's how you should deal with fat.
Yeah.
Even on excessively fat animals. Utilize the fat that's what dripping is. That's where Yorkshire pudding comes from. Rather than trim all the fat off, when you're roasting a rib of beef in your ingle nook on wrought iron and you're turning it every once in a while over embers generated by open flame, underneath the rib of beef, catching the excessive fat that's melting off of it is your Yorkshire pudding. Is your eggy batter. And as the super hot fat drips in there, it just fries it up, and that's Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah.
So think of utilizing fat that way,
Yeah.
And a very common, we didn't even do it with the lamb neck, but really common for us is we tend to roast really fatty meat, it seems like, in the fall and winter, and it's just a bed of root vegetables. Parsnips and beets and even radishes and potatoes. Chop them all up coarsely. Keep the chunks larger if it's going to be a longer cooking time, and make them smaller if it's going to be quicker. And then put the super fatty pork shoulder or lamb shoulder right on top of that. Pop a lid on it, put it in a low oven all day. And then you will be braising all of those root vegetables in the salubrious, unctuous fat. It's so good.
This conversation will be continued in a forthcoming Part 2 episode. Thanks for listening, and peace be with you.